Number 10. The feet in the sneakers. In the Canadian province of British Columbia, over a dozen feet inside shoes have washed up on local beaches. What does that mean? It means shoes washed up on the beach with feet still inside them, cut off at the ankles. According to a report from CBC News, investigators are still trying to piece together the gruesome mystery. It all started in 2007 when a right foot washed up on a beach near Vancouver Island. Over the next 11 years, a steady progression of feet continued to wash up. Oddly, the feet were always by themselves, not as a pair, and always inside a sneaker. The best theory that investigators have come up with is that the feet got separated from the rest of the corpse and then floated all the way up to Canadian shores because the shoes made them buoyant. But to make this even more mysterious, all the shoes are from different mysteries. Forensic experts have used DNA to track several of the feet to missing persons cases, while others remain unsolved. Some of the feet could belong to murder victims, some could belong to seamen who fell overboard, and some may even be from graveyards built too close to the ocean. Number 9. 200 human skeletons. Researchers in the United Kingdom have uncovered a bizarre collection of over 200 human skeletons hidden underneath the sand of an otherwise pristine beach. The human skeletons appear to be ancient, belonging to women, children, and men. According to the researchers that made this grisly beach discovery, the site had likely been occupied by a Christian church back in the 6th century. The graves had been dug too close to the beach in Pembrokeshire, and after about 1400 years of weather, the graves ended up under the sand instead of under the soil, which is about 20 feet up the beach. According to Jenna Smith from the Darfed Archaeological Trust, the corpses were in incredibly good condition because they had been stuck under the sand for so long. Archaeologists didn't find any artifacts or personal belongings, as whatever these people were buried with has long since decayed. There's also no evidence left of the church that once stood at the edge of the water. All that remains of the mysterious people that once called this stretch of coastline home are, well, the skeletal remains of the people themselves. Number 8. Yellow-bellied sea snake. In Australia, a devastating storm brought in more than just strong winds and heavy rain. It also swept onto the beach an incredibly deadly snake that just about killed a local resident out for a morning walk. She couldn't believe her bad luck when she nearly tripped over a yellow-bellied sea snake, one of the most ferocious sea snakes in the world. This creature normally inhabits deep waters in the Indian Ocean, but was likely stirred up because of the storm. It got flung onto the beach, where it desperately tried to wriggle back into the water and failed. The reason the yellow-bellied sea snake is so dangerous is that it has highly toxic venom. The snake preys primarily on fish, so its venom must be strong enough to paralyze the fish immediately upon injection. When the snake bites a human, it has the exact same effect. The person will often become paralyzed, and then soon after, well, they simply stop being alive. The local who found this particular venomous monster was wise enough not to touch it. Instead, she called Jacqueline Lloyd, a local reptile remover, then stood guard to make sure nobody accidentally came into contact with the deadly serpent. It was ultimately removed and then disposed of. Number 7. An ancient artifact. On a beach in Connecticut, Evan Honeyman, yes, his real name is Honeyman, was more than a little surprised when he discovered an incredible artifact over 1,000 years old. It was a complete fluke that he found the object. A simple piece of chiseled stone once used by the ancient indigenous people of North America. Evan had been visiting his parents' beach house in Westbrook when he decided to take a leisurely stroll along the water. And that was when he spotted the stone sticking out of the sand, likely composed of basalt or rhyolite. The object itself was likely used as the tip of a spear or the tip of an arrow. Sometime between 1,000 and 3,000 years ago, it was a simple hunting implement, a sharp stone with many purposes. And believe it or not, there are hundreds or even thousands of them hidden all across the beaches of Connecticut. The thing is that thousands of years ago, the shoreline was much farther out. Indigenous peoples lived along the shore in places that are currently underwater. They left lots of their artifacts behind, and every now and then, one of them washes up onto the beach. He must have felt pretty lucky to have been the one to find such a cool and rare artifact. Number 6. A giant hamster wheel. Officers with the Flagler County Sheriff's Office responded to a very strange emergency phone call back in July. An enormous hamster wheel had turned up on the beach. Oddly enough, the hamster wheel contained a man trapped inside and desperately waiting to be saved. If you're thinking, what the heck, you're not alone. We are too. His name is Reza Bellucci, and this wasn't the first time he was discovered on the beach stuck inside a giant hamster wheel. You see, he was trying to get all the way from Florida to New York by using his bizarre floating watercraft. He had designed what looks like a hamster wheel, a floating contraption that he can navigate by running as hard as he can, causing the wheel to spin. As the wheel spins, he's propelled forward across the surface of the water. Back in 2014, Reza had to be rescued by the Coast Guard after he was discovered fatigued and disoriented while trying to literally run from Florida to Bermuda. Then in 2016, the Coast Guard had to rescue him again during his second attempt. This was the third time he had to be rescued from his giant hamster wheel, a device that he calls the hydropod bubble. What would your reaction be if you were the one that discovered this? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Civil War cannonballs. On a beach in South Carolina, relics from the past washed up on shore following a violent hurricane. A guy named Aaron, along with his girlfriend Alba, went to the beach immediately after the hurricane, hoping they would find some cool seashells or other interesting things. They actually wanted to get a metal detector and see if they could find any pieces of history that got tossed ashore. But they ended up not needing any fancy equipment, as they stumbled across an old cannonball from the Civil War era. The hurricane had uncovered the ball, and it was just sitting there right on top of the sand. There's no way to tell what ship the cannonball had belonged to, if it was actually used in battle or if it was a ship that sank. Still, historians claim it's an important part of the local history. They also say that there are probably plenty more cannonballs on the bottom of the ocean, happily waiting for the next hurricane to bring them to shore. Number 4. Poor beagle shark. At Cape Cod Beach, a rare and beautiful shark was recently found stranded. It's called a poor beagle shark, and it's an extremely aggressive ocean predator that doesn't get a lot of press. The poor beagle is also known as the salmon shark, an incredibly active animal with a muscular body and an insatiable hunger for fish, mostly things like mackerel, cod, and herring. These predators, unlike a lot of ocean creatures, don't have any natural enemies. Because they're so enormous and physically fit, there is nothing in the ocean known to hunt them. They're basically untouchable. So how did one of these ferocious predators end up on the beach dead as a doornail? The experts aren't really sure. Scientists with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration retrieved the shark to conduct a necropsy, but they never found out just how it got onto the beach. The curious beach-going locals who stumbled across the thing are just lucky it was dead when they found it, as even on land, it probably could have bitten one of their legs off. Yikes! Number 3. World War II fighter. On a beach in England, a couple of dog walkers discovered the remains of a fighter plane that had been lost for 76 years. The plane goes back to the days of World War II, a Royal Air Force fighter that went down in 1944. It was in extremely rough shape when it was found by Debbie Hartley and her partner Graham Holden, but it was still intact enough for the Air Force in Britain to trace it back to its original squadron. This plane flew with the 254th Squadron, participating in night missions aimed at torpedoing enemy ships in the North Sea. It was part of the coastal defense of Britain to keep the Germans away from the island. Unfortunately for this plane, known as a Bristol Beaufighter, its engines blew just after it took off from base. It had to make an emergency landing on Cleethorpes Beach, where it was then abandoned and forgotten about for over 7 decades. There's not much left of it now. After all those years buried under the sand, almost all of the metal has been eaten away. Only the plane's bones are left, jutting out of the sand like the skeleton of some prehistoric monster. Number 2. A giant sperm whale. It's not that unique to find a whale washed up on a beach. It actually happens all the time. But to be the one that comes across one of the biggest whale carcasses of all time, well, that's a different feeling. A giant sperm whale was recently found stranded and dead on Swartvlei Beach in Cape Town, South Africa. The whale was an absolute behemoth, estimated to weigh about 30 tons. Nobody knows how it died, though biologists did find a significant amount of fishing rope in its stomach when they did the autopsy. They also found a large collection of squid beaks, suggesting that the whale had been eating a healthy diet of squid before it wound up dead. Marine biologists are also unsure why the whale washed up on this particular beach, as they are almost never found in waters off the coast of South Africa. Sperm whales typically dive around 3,000 feet deep as they hunt for food, eating roughly 1 ton of fish and squid each day. They also travel in pods of up to 20 individuals. Maybe this poor whale got lost, turned around, and in its disoriented state, stranded itself on the beach and passed away. What would you do if you found a 30-ton sperm whale on the beach? Let us know in the comments below. Number 1. Ancient Peruvian death mask. On a beach in Florida, archaeologists have discovered a very rare Peruvian death mask that dates back thousands of years. According to the professionals, the fragment of the mask is a good sign that there could be more treasures hiding nearby, either underwater or under the sand. This time, the treasure wasn't discovered by a couple of random beachgoers. It was a team of researchers with the Seafarer Exploration Corporation who identified the artifact and extracted it from the sand. They believe it's a piece of a funeral headpiece once used by the ancient Inca in Peru. Dr. Michael Torres, the man who actually found the mask, says it goes back to the first days when the Inca started learning how to work metal into various shapes. The mask is made partly from iridium, though nobody knows just exactly how old it is. If you're wondering why a funeral mask from Peru ended up on the beach in Florida, it probably came from a Spanish shipwreck. In the 1700s, it was popular for Spanish tomb raiders to steal things from South America, things like jewels, artifacts, and anything else they could get their hands on, then sail back to Spain. Many of those ships carrying artifacts sank off the coast of Florida. Those artifacts are now at the bottom of the ocean, though every now and again, a piece will drift ashore. Number 10. Release the sharks. Imagine going out shopping with some friends at your favorite mall. You're finding some cool stuff and the day is going great. This mall also just so happens to have a 33-ton glass shark tank. You and your friends have just taken a shopping break to admire the sharks. The sharks are swimming around minding their own business when suddenly the glass cracks. You hear the crack as it gets bigger and bigger until the tank bursts. Pieces of glass fly into your face, you get knocked down by a deluge of water, and suddenly you see sharks spilling out and floating next to you. Water is everywhere and there are sharks flopping around on the ground. That's exactly what happened to 15 people at the Shanghai Orient Shopping Center in China. 15 bewildered people were injured when the glass suddenly gave way and the shark tank emptied in seconds. 8 of the victims were customers, with the rest being shop employees or security staff. Most of the injuries were from cuts, since the glass literally shattered like a bomb had just gone off. But now you're probably wondering, what about the sharks? No, the sharks didn't bite anybody as they were sent sliding across the floor of the mall. Instead, they just kind of died because they didn't have any more water to breathe. The reason the glass failed is still under investigation, with experts right now saying it could have been a sudden drop in temperature that caused the glass to unexpectedly break. Number 9. Inky the Octopus. In New Zealand, an octopus by the name of Inky managed to escape its glass enclosure and earn itself a bit of freedom. It all happened in the middle of the night when the aquarium was deserted and the staff were long gone. Inky's cage lid had been left slightly ajar, just enough that he was able to slither from his glass enclosure, use his suckers to move along the outside of his tank, and then to the floor. From there, the octopus discovered a pipe leading directly to the ocean. He used that 150-foot-long drain pipe to escape back into the wild. For those who know anything about octopi, this shouldn't come as a huge surprise. According to Rob Yarrell, the manager of the National Aquarium where the daring breakout took place, octopi are quite famous for being escape artists. I mean, have you seen the movie Finding Dory? Even secured in a glass tank, octopi have an uncanny way of getting out and getting into trouble. They are extremely intelligent. Think about if you were a creature stuck in a glass tank. Wouldn't you try to get out too? This time, the octopus was lucky that he made it to the ocean and not just into a sewer. Number 8. Horror at the mall. At the Arrowhead Town Center in Glendale, Arizona, shoppers witnessed something out of a horror movie. A large glass pane suspended from the mall ceiling shattered without warning, then fell to the ground in a hail of glass shards and nearly killed a guy. One unfortunate shopper happened to be standing directly underneath the pane when it shattered, with firefighters describing the injuries he sustained as severe lacerations. Even though nobody caught the glass shattering on video, footage surfaced soon after of the aftermath. In the footage, you can clearly see a group of shocked shoppers standing around a man covered in blood, hunched over on the ground. The decorative glass pane was roughly the size of a refrigerator, and nobody knows why it broke. According to the senior property manager of the mall, the investigation is still ongoing. Even if they never find out the cause, it's probably not a great idea to have giant slabs of glass suspended from the ceiling purely for decorative purposes. Hey, someone thought it looked cool. Number 7. Stranded and terrified. A man walking across the Pian Mountain Bridge in China was left stranded and scared after some of the panels shattered right beneath his feet. This is obviously the last thing anyone wants when walking across a glass bridge. According to USA Today, the glass shattered because of a sudden gust of wind that rattled the panels and made them break. It left tourists clinging to the rails, with one guy right in the middle of the broken panes, trapped on a thin beam and holding on for dear life. To make matters even more terrifying for this poor guy, the bridge is around 300 feet above ground, and at the time, winds were gusting at 93 miles per hour. This guy had to hold on for over an hour before a rescue team was able to get him. Everybody managed to get off the bridge alive, but it was extremely close. One wrong move and he could have tumbled all the way to the bottom, splattering himself on the rocks below. Number 6. Lawyer overboard. Gary Hoy was the man who accidentally threw himself through a glass window. It happened in Toronto back in July of 1993. And while it wasn't exactly Gary's fault that he threw himself through the glass window, he's not exactly blameless. One of his favorite office tricks was to throw himself at the windows of the skyscraper to show just how strong the glass was. But unfortunately for him, the glass wasn't actually that strong. When he threw himself at the glass this time, showing off for a group of students, it shattered into 1,000 tiny shards. And he went flying from the 24th floor of the Toronto Dominion Bank Tower. When he landed on the concrete below, he may as well have been a watermelon. His body broke, and he died immediately. Where do you think the fault lies with this terrible tragedy? Was it Gary's fault for foolishly trying to test the tensile strength of the glass? Or was it the architect who designed the building? Let us know in the comments section down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Emptying the pool. In Brazil, a glass-bottom pool shattered in the middle of the night, dropping gallons of water into the parking garage directly below. Amazingly, nobody was in the pool when it happened. In fact, there doesn't appear to be any kind of reason why the glass even shattered. It was a clean break, with the rectangular bottom falling completely out. All the water came spilling down at once, flooding the parking garage. The water splashed down on the hood of a car with such force that it pushed the car several feet backward. It was extremely fortunate that nobody was in the pool at the time. They probably would have died. The building needed to be evacuated after the incident for safety reasons, while a construction company came in to look at its structural integrity. The residents did eventually return, though there's no word yet if the pool has been rebuilt. Even if they do rebuild the pool, who in their right mind would go swimming in it now? Number 4. The McDonald's storefront. In Portland, Oregon, police say a man used a rock to smash through the storefront of a McDonald's restaurant. Apparently, the glass McDonald's uses to keep its stores safe is about as safe as the glass that Gary Hoy threw himself through. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning, and employees were so shocked when the glass shattered and a man stepped through the threshold and into the store that they hid in the freezer. Luckily, employees already called the police because the man had been pounding on the door trying to get in. But once the police arrived, the man barricaded himself in the store and wouldn't come out. Police had no choice but to monitor the situation from a distance because he was irate and unpredictable. The suspect ended up barricading himself in the back room. This was at the same time that the employees were shivering in the freezer, both from fear and from the cold. Eventually, one of the cops had to use a sledgehammer to break through a back window and sneak in behind the perp. The officer then used pepper spray to disorient him before managing to get his hands handcuffed behind his back. As for why the lunatic broke into the McDonald's in the first place, nobody really knows. He may have just been crazy, or just really craving McNuggets. Number 3. London's escapist gorilla. A silverback gorilla managed to break its glass enclosure and escape from its habitat at a major zoo in London. Visitors had to be locked inside of the gift shop for over an hour while armed police officers stormed the zoo in search of the gorilla named Kumbuka. He was quickly tracked down, tranquilized, and then returned to his home. The enormous primate didn't cause any harm while on the loose, he simply took a little bit of a stroll. Still, it was quite the ordeal for staff at the zoo. Gorillas are incredibly powerful, and all animals are unpredictable. Ones that are kept in cages can be even more unpredictable once they get out and are on the loose in environments they don't understand. What's more, according to a report from The Guardian, this wasn't even the first time that the gorilla had tried to escape. He had broken through the glass enclosure at least twice before this incident. He was even described by zoo workers as a bit on the destructive side. Even more interesting is that nobody knows how exactly Kumbuka even broke through the glass. They don't know if he used tools, if he threw something at it, or if he simply used raw gorilla strength. They only know he was definitely responsible because they found his footprints on the broken glass. Next time, Kumbuka is covering his tracks. Number 2. Clever monkey. Speaking of monkeys breaking glass, an extremely intelligent Colombian white-faced capuchin monkey was recently caught on video doing just that. This little monkey was witnessed sharpening a rock and then using it as a tool to smash through the glass wall of its cage. This video is indisputable evidence of evolution in motion. This tiny monkey figured out all by itself how to take a rock, sharpen it so that it can do more damage, and then use it to break out of its cage. Either the monkey had way too much time on its hands and figured out this little trick by accident, or humans need to watch out. We're actually pretty sure this is the first step to a global monkey takeover. Here comes Planet of the Apes. Tian Chuliao, a staff member of the Zhongzhou Zoo, told local media, "This monkey is unlike other monkeys. This one knows how to use tools to break walnuts. When we feed walnuts to other monkeys, they only know to bite it. But it had never hit the glass before though. This is the first time. It's toughened glass, so it would have never have got out. After it happened, we picked up all the rocks and took away all its weapons." After employees at the zoo were alerted to what happened, they put the monkey on a timeout while they fixed the glass. They also took away all the rocks in its enclosure, as well as anything else the monkey could fashion into a weapon. And in a bizarre show of force, the zoo also promised to step up patrols so that none of its clever monkeys can escape in the future. You can hardly fault them for trying though. Number 1. Terror above Chicago. At 13,053 feet above the streets of Chicago, a family from California experienced one of the most traumatic incidents of their life. They were on the 103rd floor, looking down at the city from the glass viewing platform when it cracked right under their feet. The glass appeared to shatter as they stood on it, causing the family to panic and for staff members to quickly evacuate them from the viewing platform. Luckily, the glass didn't break completely. It shattered, but didn't physically disintegrate. Nonetheless, the family was understandably shaken. Just moments before they stepped on the viewing platform, one of the staff members had informed them that it could withstand a weight of up to 5 tons and was unbreakable. Clearly, that wasn't exactly true. The viewing platform was closed afterward for inspection, but has since been reopened. The general manager, Randy Stankic, says that the glass itself isn't what cracked, but rather its coating. It was just the protective surface of the glass that shattered, giving the appearance that the whole floor was seconds away from breaking. Hopefully they added a few more layers of protection to prevent something like this from ever happening again. Number 10. Mutant Pig. A terrifying mutant pig creature has been discovered in the US and nobody has any idea what the thing is. The strange animal was found floating in a lake with what appears to be the body of a pig but the hands of a human. It also had a straight tail, just to make things even more confusing. The individual who found the monster didn't do anything except film his discovery and then get out of there. In the video, you can hear the man complaining about a rancid stench coming off the beast's waterlogged corpse. But what is the creature really? Was it some sort of mythical creature that died? Maybe it was the man-bear pig like from South Park. Ever since the discovery, people have been trying to figure out what the animal was. Just a decomposing pig or some other kind of creature that apparently got the wrong genetics. Like, what's up with the hands? The thing is that its legs kind of looked like those of a dog, except the hands had long human fingers. Since nobody's seen the creature again, this is one weird animal mystery that may never be solved. Number 9. The naked mole rat. The naked mole rat doesn't look like it should even exist. It's a terrifying creature that goes against just about everything that should be natural. They don't even look like anything, except for naked mole rats. There's nothing else this ugly on the planet to compare them to. If you've ever wondered what makes a naked mole rat tick, you're in luck. Here's some incredible facts. This tragic animal is born weighing less than a single penny, with the queen mole rat producing an average litter of between 12 and 28 pups. Then, for the rest of the naked mole rat's life, it never drinks water. Because they eat underground plants, they get all their moisture from their food. But they get even weirder than that, as a quarter of the naked mole rat's muscle mass can be found in its jaws. It needs all that power to dig through soil with its teeth. And speaking of its teeth, it can move each incisor independently, like chopsticks. Basically, the naked mole rat is a freak of nature, yet an extremely fascinating one. They can live into their 30s and are known for digging tunnels up to 2.5 miles long. Oh yeah, and they eat their own poop. Nice. Number 8. Cyclops Snake. A snake discovered in Mississippi had some serious issues with its genetics. Birth defects are pretty common throughout the animal kingdom, but this reticulated python took things to a new level of disturbing. It was discovered with 2 eyes inside of just 1 eye socket. The breeder of the snake, Tyree Jemison, couldn't believe his eyes when the snake hatched from its egg looking like a cyclops, except that it had 2 eyes. But because its eyes were so squished together inside of just a single socket, it looked like a googly-eyed Cyclops monster. Usually, when genetic mishaps like this happen, the animal will die in nature. It probably won't have the skills or adaptations it needs to hunt for food. The breeder knew that the snake probably wouldn't have a very good life, so he went ahead and euthanized it. He put the mutant snake in his freezer, one of the most humane ways of euthanizing any animal. He's now thinking about selling it as a science specimen. He's already been offered $750 in cash. Number 7. The ugly eye. The eye is one of the ugliest and strangest creatures living on our planet today. It looks like someone's poor idea of a science fiction monster. The reason it's so freakish is that it appears to have the genetics of too many different animals. It's technically a lemur, but it looks like a frightened cat mixed with a shocked raccoon and a monkey on drugs. The creature has spiky white fur, extremely slender fingers like Nosferatu, and bright yellow eyes like a werewolf. These creatures only grow to be about 3 feet long, with its tail the same length as its body. It actually has the longest hair out of any member of its family, including bush babies, lemurs, and tarsiers. In captivity, the eye can live for up to 20 years. It is quite rare and only lives on the island of Madagascar. It's so creepy that the locals say if you see one, somebody is going to die. So they actually try to kill the poor creatures on sight. It's not their fault they look scary. As you can probably imagine for such a freakish animal, the eye is a solitary being. It spends most of its life hiding up in the trees, sleeping, mating, and eating. It's one of the largest nocturnal primates in the world, but they really don't like sharing their territory with other eyes and will even spray their favorite trees with urine and a nasty concoction that comes from scent glands found in their cheeks and butts. Luckily today, they are protected by law, but the eye hasn't had much luck improving its genetics. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Number 6. The goat with a human face. Villagers in India were terrified when a goat with the worst genetics possible was born. This disturbing creature is definitely a goat, but it was born with the face of a human. Its bizarre facial structure makes it look like an ordinary old guy who sits on the porch all afternoon and scowls at people. At first, they didn't know what to think of the thing, as it was honestly pretty hard to look at. But according to the New York Post, the villagers soon got used to the animal and started worshipping it as a kind of god. Here's why. In India, rural villagers will often interpret mutant animals as a sign from God. Nobody knows exactly why they do this, but they believe that when a freakish animal is born, it's a sign of good fortune. But according to the experts, the goat actually suffers from a congenital defect called cyclopia, meaning the genes that are supposed to create facial symmetry are absent. The result is that the goat's face is all mushed up and wrong. It probably won't live a very long life, but at least it's getting the royal treatment from the villagers in the meantime. Number 5. Hairless rabbits. If you've never seen a hairless rabbit, you're not alone. These rare and unnatural animals are absolutely terrifying. Picture a hairless cat, except way worse, like a really bad magician's failed hat trick. And while hairless rabbits may not even look like real things, they definitely exist. They were brought about because of a genetic mutation that causes them to have only a little bit of fur around their ears, on their feet, and around their nose. The result is oddly captivating, especially with all that pink, rubbery skin. Depending on your outlook, hairless rabbits are either adorable wonders or hellish beasts. Unfortunately, hairless rabbits don't have a very long life expectancy. The genetics are all messed up because of the recessive mutation that causes them to start balding while just a baby. They'll grow weak, normally way before they're supposed to. This means they require a significant amount of care. While they might be exotic, hairless rabbits actually have no place in the natural world. Would you have hairless rabbits for pets? What's the weirdest pet you've had? Let me know what you think of these fascinating animals in the comments. And remember to hit the subscribe button before the end of the video. Number 4. Islas fish monster. Julieta Garcia was working at San Roque Lake in Argentina as a pedal boat service manager when she spotted something strange floating beneath a bridge. Absolutely captivated by the weird animal, she got as close as she could without actually diving in with it. The creature was about 2.5 feet long, though its head was nearly a foot in diameter. Julieta managed to fish the creature onto the shoreline, where she took pictures of it and then posted them on social media to try and figure out what the freakish thing was. But this was easier said than done, as nobody has been able to identify the monstrosity. It had the body of an eel, but its head was way too big. Even people who had been working at the lake their whole lives had never seen anything like it before. It was a genetic failure, probably an eel or some type of fish that was born with all the wrong parts. After Julieta took pictures of the eel thing, she tossed it back in the water. Why? It had started to stink and was driving the customers away. Number 3. Horseshoe bats. Horseshoe bats are arguably the most terrifying type of bat in the world. They have a distinctive flap of skin on their nose in the shape of a horseshoe, which distinguishes them from all other flying rodents. The horseshoe uses the skin flap, called a nose leaf, for echolocation. Other than their bizarre appearance, horseshoe bats are relatively normal. They sleep hanging upside down, with their wings wrapped around their bodies like protective cocoons. They emerge from the darkness just before sunset and then scour the land for yummy bugs. Another really fascinating thing about the horseshoe bat is that the female will give birth while hanging upside down. She then catches her baby in her wings, like a baseball player catching a fly ball in their glove. The female horseshoe bat will then take care of her baby until it reaches maturity, making her one of the best moms in the animal kingdom. Number 2. Elephant seals. Elephant seals are by all accounts horrifying. They defy everything cute and cuddly about the natural world. There are 2 different breeds, the northern elephant seals that live around California, and the southern elephant seals that live in Antarctic waters. The southern elephant seals are the biggest, with the males growing up to 8,800 pounds. They can also be over 20 feet long, with huge inflatable snouts that look like elephant trunks. It's hard to say exactly how elephant seals climb their way up the evolutionary ladder to be alive alongside some miraculous creatures like eagles and lions, but they're here and that's that. One of the most bizarre things about elephant seals is the way they breed. Males will battle one another for dominance. The male who wins all the fights that usually end up turning into vicious battles to the death, earn the right to mate with all the females. The victorious elephant seal will collect himself somewhere around 40 to 50 females, which it then mates with fervently. But here's where things get really gross. The female elephant seal is significantly smaller than their male counterparts. Mating can actually have deadly consequences. The males are so big that they sometimes crush the females underneath them. This really makes you wonder, yet again, how this creature can even exist. If the simple act of procreation frequently causes death, something went very wrong during the animal's evolution. Number 1. The Armadillo Monster. You may have seen a terrifying monster online recently, a creature that looks like a disgusting mixture between a human and an armadillo. The creature first appeared online as part of a post warning farmers to keep a lookout for the dangerous animals, as it was on the loose and terrifying local livestock in India. At first glance, there's something obviously wrong with the Armadillo Monster. If real, it would be the only creature on the planet this terrifying, with the bald head of a human, a pointy nose, bright blue eyes, and a monster's body covered in armadillo scales. Luckily, this was not an incident of genetics gone wrong, just the internet being the internet. There was never any creature, it was just a piece of artwork made out of silicone. Somebody took the pictures from the artist's Instagram account and then began spreading them across the net, claiming the creature was real.
Number 10. Alien Squid. It should be no surprise that the largest creatures found in the sea are also the most terrifying. For example, take a look at the new evidence of a preposterously large and ridiculously scary squid. But this isn't the giant squid, which is still the biggest. Today, we're talking about an alien squid, and it's one of the rarest creatures on Earth. The proper name for this monster is the big fin squid, and since its discovery over 100 years ago, there have only been 12 confirmed sightings. That's because the giant squid lives in the extreme depths of the ocean, anywhere from 7,000 to 15,000 feet below the surface. The most recent sightings were reported in 2020 by Live Science after 5 new images were taken of various big fin squids near southern Australia. The 5 squid were captured by underwater cameras, and it's the first time a collection of these horrifyingly large monsters have ever been seen. But you're probably wondering just how big the big fin squid is. Well, they can grow to be over 23 feet long, and maybe even longer. But what's shocking is that their tentacles are way longer than their bodies. For example, the new squid that were spotted near Australia were pretty small, only measuring about 6 feet in length. 6 inches of that length was their body, with the remaining length all being their tentacles. Unfortunately, there is still a lot scientists don't know about the big fin squid. Nobody knows what it eats, how it reproduces, what exactly it's doing with those long tentacles, or just how many there are in the ocean. Still, it's one of the biggest and scariest things down there. Number 9. The sunflower star. Let's take a look next at the sunflower star, also known as the world's largest starfish. While it might not be big enough to be carried around on a forklift, it's still a pretty large and awesome animal. It has the longest arm span of any sea star, and it's also the heaviest. The star can be 40 inches from tip to tip and can weigh up to 13.5 pounds. It also has the most arms out of any known species. The sunflower star has 15 to 24 arms, all of them symmetrically arranged. But the reason this monstrous sea star is called sunflower is because they are sometimes a deep yellow colour, and all their arms kind of look like flower petals. But sunflower stars can also be purple, orange, and even red. Other than its abnormal size, underneath there are thousands of tiny little feet which act as suction cups. They give the star an amazing grip and help it to catch prey. The feet are also used for walking. According to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, the sunflower star can move up to 40 inches a minute, which is fast for a starfish. If you've ever wondered how starfish get from place to place, this is how they do it. Starfish can indeed walk, and they certainly hunt. Number 8. Megalodon. The Megalodon may not be alive anymore, but it still deserves a place on this list, especially seeing as it's the largest known predator that we know of to have ever roamed the oceans of our planet. The sperm whale may be longer than the Megalodon, but there is no other ocean predator living or dead that even comes close to its weight. Even though size estimates have changed throughout the years, scientists still agree that this massive ancient shark was at least 70 feet long and weighed around 70 tons. In comparison, the great white shark of today only grows to be around 21 feet and 3.5 tons. That pretty much means the Megalodon would have eaten the great white shark as a snack. And if you want to compare the weight of this monstrous shark to something, it weighed about as much as 10 standard elephants. Imagine bumping into this thing on your next scuba diving trip. If the Megalodon had never gone extinct, it's safe to say that nobody would be diving or scuba diving in any large bodies of water. The first Megalodon skull was reconstructed in 1909, and at the time scientists had estimated its length to be almost 100 feet. That doesn't appear to be the case anymore, but it's no wonder this animal has been such a legend throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. And if you want to compare the size of the Megalodon to ancient carnivorous dinosaurs, it was significantly bigger than the Spinosaurus, the T-Rex, or any other vicious creature. A single tooth from one of these massive sharks is bigger than the average human hand. Number 7. Giant Pacific Octopus. Moving on to something that is still living. The giant Pacific octopus is the largest octopus in the world. It's not even close to being as large as a giant squid, but it's still a pretty hefty cephalopod. The giant Pacific octopus can be found along the west coast, north to Alaska and across Japan. Specifically, the giant Pacific octopus can be found off the coast of British Columbia. They live around 6,600 feet deep and weigh on average about 156 pounds. That might not seem like a lot, but considering the octopus basically has no bones, it's a pretty substantial number. But what's really amazing about the giant Pacific octopus is that it has huge suckers on its tentacles, with each sucker able to support at least 35 pounds. If this monstrous glob of limbs got a hold of you, there would be no getting it off. According to Guinness World Records, the biggest ever giant Pacific octopus was around a whopping 300 pounds and had an arm span of 32 feet. That's almost ridiculous just to try and imagine. But unlike many ocean creatures, the giant Pacific octopus doesn't live very long. They only live between 3 and 5 years in the wild, and they lay anywhere from 120,000 to 400,000 eggs. So, they have a pretty good rate of reproduction. Also, octopuses are considered to be the most intelligent invertebrates on Earth. They can solve mazes, open jars, and even recognize humans. Number 6. Oarfish. The oarfish is the largest bony fish in the world. According to Live Science, the giant oarfish can reach an unbelievable length of 110 feet. That's over 2 giant squids stacked on top of each other from head to tentacle. While the giant oarfish is extremely rare because it lives very deep in the oceans, it does sometimes wash up lifeless on beaches. When it does, it looks like a washed up sea serpent. It's also viewed as a harbinger of destruction. In Asia, specifically in Japan and the Philippines, people interpret a giant oarfish washing up on the shore as a warning before a deadly tsunami. It is known in traditional Japanese folklore as messenger from the sea god's palace. This has been the theory since ancient times, and there are actually some examples of giant oarfish washing up in Japan just days before a huge tsunami trashed the country. However, it's doubtful that the oarfish has any supernatural premonition abilities. When a tsunami begins underwater, it's likely that the oarfish becomes displaced and washes up on shore. It's kind of like an early warning system against disaster, though scientists are not confident that an oarfish always means the worst is soon to come. Number 5. The elephant seal. The elephant seal is truly the elephant of the sea. It's one of the weirdest, laziest, and most obese animals on Earth. The elephant seal actually gets its name because of its fat nose, which almost looks like an elephant's trunk. It also helps that they are a similar grey colour. And while the elephant seal doesn't live strictly in the ocean, it's still a marine animal. Also, elephant seals are ridiculously cute as babies. When an elephant seal is just a pup, it looks like an adorable aquatic dog. You just want to cuddle it on your couch all day. It's not until the seal reaches 7 to 9 years old that it becomes a little frightening to look at with its giant nose trunk. You can find elephant seals from Baja, California all the way to the Gulf of Alaska, and they typically breed in rural areas on the shore without too many people around. But here's a pretty gnarly fact about the elephant seal. They molt kind of like snakes and shrimps. Each year between April and August, elephant seals shed their hair and the top layer of their skin. It's an absolutely gruesome thing to witness, but it definitely explains how such a cute baby could transform into its hideous adult counterpart. As for the massive size of these animals, an adult elephant seal can weigh up to 8,800 pounds. Number 4. The longest animal ever. The longest animal ever has recently been discovered living inside a submarine canyon off the coast of Australia. According to the scientists who discovered it, the creature is the longest animal ever found. It has a shocking length of 150 feet. But what is this animal? It looks like a glowing length of thread, just kind of drifting through the ocean in a mesmerizing spiral. It's essentially a translucent length of string longer than any other animal on record. But it is in fact made up of small animals known as zooids. Together, these individual zooids create the animal we now know as a siphonophore. The zooids are actually quite fascinating. Each one performs a special function for the larger body of the siphonophore. It's a long colony of individual organisms all working together to survive. Think of it like when all the Power Rangers morph into a giant robot. It's the same kind of idea, except the enormous siphonophore is only about as thick as a broomstick. How all the zooids stayed together in the water is nothing short of a miracle, and who knows the next time we will ever encounter another one of this length. Number 3. The lion's mane jellyfish. Most people are familiar with the box jellyfish. The box jellyfish is a venomous creature in the 7 seas, able to kill a man in seconds merely by brushing its long stringy arms against his skin. But the biggest jellyfish roaming our oceans is actually the lion's mane jellyfish. Believe it or not, it's nearly the size of the siphonophore we just talked about. A typical lion's mane jellyfish can stretch 120 feet from the top of its spongy head to the bottom of its tentacles. Oh, and yes, the sting of a lion's mane jellyfish can also be horribly painful. Though they are not poisonous, the tentacles contain massive amounts of neurotoxins that can cause severe allergic reactions when they come into contact with human flesh. They have been spotted at several South Shore beaches, though you probably won't bump into one while on a snorkeling adventure. The animal is also known as the giant jellyfish, the Arctic red jellyfish because of its eerie blood red colour, or the hair jellyfish because its dozens and dozens of tentacles almost look like wispy human hair. Number 2. Whale shark. Now, we talked about the gigantic Megalodon, but it's extinct. So, now you might think the next biggest shark to currently roam our oceans is the great white. But, you would be wrong. The award for biggest shark still alive and swimming around the planet goes to the whale shark. But even though the whale shark is massive, it mainly feeds on plankton. The whale shark will open its mouth and gobble up as much plankton as possible, while it wanders constantly through the oceans looking for food. Whale sharks are popular with tourists because they are so peaceful and fun to swim with. However, not too much is known about the whale shark because unfortunately they are indeed endangered. According to the World Wildlife Foundation, most scientists believe the maximum size of the whale shark is around 40 feet, but it could be bigger. It's obviously believed that females give birth to live babies, and yet it has never been observed in the wild. Young whale sharks have almost never been seen. People only ever find adults near the surface of the ocean, and they can dive as deep as 3,000 feet below the surface. It makes you wonder where all the baby whale sharks are hiding. Number 1. The blue whale. Now it's time to meet the largest creature in the ocean. Not only is the blue whale the largest animal currently living on our planet, but so far as scientists are concerned, it is the largest animal that has ever existed on Earth, period. The blue whale has a length of up to 110 feet and a weight of 330,000 pounds. That makes it far larger even than the legendary Megalodon. The blue whale could open its mouth and swallow a great white shark like you might swallow a Tic Tac. But these animals are so much more than just giants. They are also one of the loudest animals on the planet, making all kinds of pulses and moans while they swim through the ocean. Many scientists believe this is a way for them to communicate to each other across massive distances. It could also be a natural sonar to help them navigate the dark depths of our world. And even though they are so large, blue whales mainly eat fish and small crustaceans. They hunt for food simply by opening their mouths and swallowing all the animals that are unfortunate enough to end up inside. While it's true their numbers have significantly decreased thanks to whale hunters from the 1900s, there are still quite a few blue whales still living in the ocean. A single blue whale can live for up to 90 years, and they reach sexual maturity somewhere around 5 to 15 years old, which is shockingly late in the animal world. It then takes about 12 months to give birth. However, it's unsure how many babies a blue whale will give birth to in the span of its long life. Number 10. Humpback whale saves diver. It's not every day a humpback whale saves somebody's life. And this is probably something you would never expect to happen. But in 2017, a magical thing occurred. A marine biologist was rescued by a humpback whale that weighed over 50,000 pounds. That is one hefty rescuer. It happened while she was diving near the Cook Islands, enjoying the peace and quiet of the sea. Yeah, right. There is a lot going on here. The enormous humpback whale swam up to her and then began to lift her out of the water with its head. At the time, she didn't really know what was happening. What was the whale doing? She wasn't afraid of it and thought it was trying to tell her something. She just didn't know what. The whale was pushing her around with its head for an extremely tense 10 minutes. It was bumping her with its belly and swiping at her with its huge fins. After 28 years spent with whales, the marine biologist had never experienced anything like it before. Considering the whale's massive size, it could have easily broken bones or even ruptured internal organs if it had bumped her too hard. It wasn't until she got out of the water and returned to her research vessel that she realised there was a big problem. There had been another visitor in the water with her, a massive 15-foot tiger shark. It had been lurking on the other side of the whale throughout the entire encounter. Luckily, the entire showdown was caught on video. At closer inspection, it's very clear that the humpback whale was actually shielding her from the deadly shark as if it were her own calf, not trying to beat her in an underwater wrestling match. And this isn't the first time a whale has been caught doing this. According to Live Science, a 2009 photo was taken by a different marine biologist of a humpback whale cradling a seal to its chest while rolling around in the water, shielding the poor little seal from a group of savage killer whales. Humpback whales are actually very compassionate animals. Who knew these were such heroic creatures? Number 9. Lions foil kidnapping. Leave it to the lions to thwart a kidnapping. This is an old story from 2005 after a gang of men stole a girl and held her prisoner in the remote southwest region of Ethiopia. This is a very sad and sometimes common occurrence as people try to take advantage of young girls walking to school and force them into marriage. As reported by The Guardian, the girl had already been kidnapped for several days before the pride of lions showed up and chased away her captors. Apparently, a pride heard her cries and came to investigate and then attacked the men. The lions then stood guard around the young girl for half a day before the police and her family managed to locate her. Then the lions just kind of sauntered off, leaving the girl behind as a gift. The sergeant of the province said that if the lions hadn't come to the rescue, the girl would have suffered much worse. In this case, the lions might have even saved her life. A wildlife expert weighed in on the situation and said that it was likely the lions rescued the child because she had been crying. The moaning and whimpering from a young girl could easily be mistaken for the persistent meowing that a cub makes, which alerted the lions to the girl's location and explained why they didn't eat her. Why do you think the lions protected her? The sounds? Or maybe something else? Let me know in the comments below. There are also stories of lions attacking poachers, and perhaps they knew these men were up to no good. As you can imagine, the girl and her family were shocked and relieved. As of the date of the news report, 4 men had been taken into custody and 3 were still being hunted. It's just too bad that there aren't more heroic lion prides around to save even more lives. Number 8. Sea Lion Saviour. Jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge can't be an easy decision to make. A few years ago, a young man named Kevin Hines got on a bus in San Francisco and headed to the Golden Gate Bridge. According to the boy, he sat on the bus hoping someone would ask him if he was alright, seeing as he was crying openly. But nobody did, and someone even went as far as to point at him and ask another man what the hell was wrong with the crying kid. When the bus stopped, Kevin paced along the Golden Gate Bridge for nearly an hour and eventually jumped off. He plummeted 220 feet in 4 seconds flat and hit the water at a gut-curdling 75 miles per hour. At such intense speeds, the boy was sucked 70 feet below the water. He fractured his lower vertebrae and couldn't swim, and that was when the sea lion saved his life. It came out of nowhere and nudged the boy all the way to the surface, then held him there while he breathed. 12 minutes later, and the Coast Guard rescued the young boy. Today, he is still alive and can even walk. Kevin is a huge advocate for suicide prevention and is always grateful to the sea lion who saved him. He's one of the few people that survived jumping off the infamous bridge, and it was all thanks to a brave sea lion. But I have to wonder, what is that sea lion up to today? Is it still trolling the waters, saving lives? Let me know if you have ever had an amazing experience with a wild animal in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We have lots of animal videos coming up. Number 7. Porpoises save Dick Van Dyke. Youngsters may not have any clue who Dick Van Dyke is, but you can bet he was an extremely famous actor before you were born. He was the star of Mary Poppins and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, along with dozens of other fantastic movies. But many people don't know that Dick Van Dyke's life had actually been saved once thanks to a generous pod of porpoises. According to the legend himself, he had been at his local beach on his surfboard, soaking in the sun and catching some waves when he fell asleep. An undetermined amount of time later, Dick Van Dyke woke up far from any land. He had drifted off without waking up, and now he was in the middle of nowhere. Dick Van Dyke started paddling, and moments later he saw fins sticking out of the water and thought he was about to be eaten by a gang of vicious sharks. But they weren't sharks, they were porpoises, and they ended up aiding Dick Van Dyke all the way to shore. As reported by The Guardian, this story is 100% true and came straight from the man's mouth. If it hadn't been for the friendly porpoises, the famous movie star may have drifted off to sea and been lost forever. Just imagine the infamous Dick Van Dyke meeting his end on an unknown horizon, all because he fell asleep on his surfboard. Number 6. A hero pot-bellied pig. Lulu may not be a wild animal, but she's a fantastic hero who deserves some recognition. Lulu is a Vietnamese pot-bellied pig who lives at Beaver Falls. The parents of the pig's owner agreed to babysit it one day. A day turned into a week turned into a month, and the woman never came back for her pig. Lulu had new owners. She grew and grew and sprouted from a cute little 4-pound pig to a 150-pound monster in only a year. And while Lulu's owners loved her to death as the cherished family piggy, she soon became a hero. The father was out fishing one day when the mother had a heart attack. It was her second heart attack in 18 months and there was nobody around to help. She managed to throw her alarm clock through a window and yell for help, but nobody came. Luckily, Lulu jumped into action. She squeezed her fat body through the doggy door, managed to get the front gates to the house open, and then lay down in traffic until somebody stopped and followed Lulu back to the house where the woman was having a heart attack. The man soon called an ambulance, and the woman's life was saved, all thanks to the pot-bellied pig her daughter had asked them to babysit over a year ago. And so, the next time you're munching down on some crispy bacon, just remember the story of Lulu the pig and how she saved her mother's life. Pigs may be delicious, but they're incredibly smart too. Number 5. Dolphins save swimmers. If there was ever a marine animal that could compete with man's best friend, it would definitely be the dolphin. There's no doubt that dolphins are capable, intelligent, and always happy to lend a hand. And they even get a little frisky at inappropriate times. Nothing speaks of the bravery of our dolphin friends quite like this next story from New Zealand. It all went down when 4 swimmers went for a dip off the coast near Whangarei on the North Island. They were all swimming and having a good time when a group of dolphins came out of nowhere. At first, the swimmers just thought the dolphins were playing. Then they realised they were actually under attack by an evil shark. Not that sharks are inherently evil, but that's for another day. In any case, the dolphins began to surround the swimmers, circling them in a protective ring. This is what one of the swimmers told the New Zealand Press Association. The swimmers could see a massive great white shark lurking just 10 feet away in the crystal clear waters, being kept back thanks to the circling dolphins. This insanity went on for a full 40 minutes, and the entire time the dolphins worked together to protect the vulnerable human swimmers. The shark eventually lost interest and went away, and then the swimmers were able to hoof it back to shore. According to an expert, the behaviour of the dolphins was actually pretty typical, as they often attack sharks to protect themselves and their babies. Number 4. Beavers save orphan boy. Saviours come in all shapes and sizes, from brave lions to courageous beavers. This terrifying story involves a group of beavers, a young orphan boy, and the worst camping trip ever. The boy didn't start the trip as an orphan. He arrived in the woods with his parents, who then decided to go fishing while he remained on the shore. Moments later, the boy watched completely helpless as his parents' boat tipped over and they drowned. It's a heartbreaking story, and the only saving grace comes from the hero beavers. The boy tried to find his way to the nearest town, but the sun went down. He soon found himself stranded alone in the cold and dark forest. But that was when the beavers showed up. They surrounded the boy and kept him warm all through the night with their furry bodies. The temperatures dropped far below freezing in the night, and the young boy might not have survived if it hadn't been for the cuddly beavers and their warmth. This is just another example of a forest critter coming to the rescue. While we don't know what happens to the young orphan, it's safe to say he will have a deep respect for beavers for the rest of his life, though he probably won't be going on any more camping trips. Number 3. Pitbull attacks deer that attacks woman. Deer are typically friendly animals. They hang out in our yards, they eat our apples, and they take naps in our grass. But sometimes deer attack. In 2019, a Canadian woman was minding her own business on a typical Tuesday afternoon when she got into a horrifying wrestling match with a giant deer in her own backyard. According to CTV News, she walked down the steps of her home to take her dog for a walk when the deer came out of nowhere. It was an 8-point buck and had huge antlers, and she had to grab hold of them as he tried to charge her. But the buck was so strong that it picked the woman off the ground. It may very well have impaled her with its horns if it hadn't been for her heroic dog. The woman's pit bull was quite a bit smaller than the buck and was dancing around its feet, trying to bite its legs. The dog managed to distract the furious deer for long enough for the woman to call the police. Then, by the time the police arrived, the dog and the deer were in a desperate battle. Unfortunately, the police had no choice but to put the deer down. I guess this is more of a story about a pet defending someone from a rabid wild animal, but it's an incredible story nonetheless. Number 2. Bear saves man from lion. Most people are terrified of bears. The one thing you need to be careful about when wandering off into the woods is a big mean black bear charging you out of nowhere. But who expects a bear to save them from a lion? Not Robert Biggs. He had been admiring a cute family of black bears during a hike in Northern California, from a good distance away of course, when out of nowhere a giant mountain lion attacked him from behind. It had been stalking him while he was distracted by the bears, and it finally saw its opportunity to attack. Biggs was nearly 70 years old, and obviously not in the best shape to take on a fully grown mountain lion. Luckily, he had his rock pick handy and bashed the lion in the head with it. But the beast wouldn't let go. This was when the bear came out of nowhere and grabbed the lion by the throat. It was the mama bear, and it let loose a horrible roar as it threw the cat off the hiker. She outweighed the cat by at least a few hundred pounds, and after a brief battle, the cat ran away and the bear went back to her babies. The hiker left the woods with his life, all thanks to a territorial black bear. Number 1. Saved by beluga whale. Yang Yun was in the middle of a freediving contest with absolutely no breathing equipment, submerged 20 feet inside a water tank chilled to frigid Arctic temperatures and filled with whales when she found her leg completely cramped because of the cold water. She couldn't move. It was at that point when Myla the beluga whale took Yang Yun's leg in her mouth and helped her get out of the tank. The whale literally lifted the girl out of the pool to safety. It was as if she could feel Yang Yun's distress and knew instinctively to help. It makes you wonder just how incredibly intelligent these marine animals really are. If it hadn't been for the beluga's quick thinking, the 26-year-old diver could have found herself at the end of her rope. When the water is that cold, it's typical for the limbs to cramp and become useless. Plus, when you are 20 feet deep, the intense water pressure keeps your body submerged. I think the next time I go diving, I'll be hiring a whale for a bodyguard. What do you think of these amazing animal rescues? Tell me in the comments below, and thank you for watching. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. See you again soon for another awesome video.